It feels like a lifetime ago, yet the memory remains etched into my soul, sharp and unforgiving. My life, the one I had carefully built, brick by loving brick, crumbled in an instant. I was Sarah, a 42-year-old graphic designer, wife to Mark, mother to our two beautiful children, Lily, then 12, and Tom, 9. We lived in a comfortable suburban house in Austin, Texas. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. Or so I thought. Mark ran a moderately successful construction business he'd built from the ground up. I worked part-time, balancing deadlines, with school runs and soccer practice. Our life felt complete, stable, ours. The betrayal didn't arrive like a sudden storm. It seeped in, like a slow, insidious leak. Mark started working later. Business trips became more frequent. There were hushed phone calls, a new password on his laptop, a subtle distance that felt like a chasm opening between us. I tried to ignore the warning signs, blaming stress, convincing myself that 15 years of marriage meant something, that we meant something. Then came the day I couldn't ignore it anymore. A misplaced credit card statement, tucked carelessly into his briefcase. Charges for expensive dinners I hadn't attended, hotel stays in cities he wasn't supposed to be visiting, jewelry I'd never received. The name on the receipts wasn't mine. It was hers. Jessica, a younger woman, barely 30, who worked as a consultant for one of his clients. A woman I'd met briefly at a company event, all dazzling smiles and sharp ambition. The confrontation was ugly, predictable even. First came the denials, then the gaslighting. I was paranoid, insecure, imagining things. But the evidence was irrefutable. Finally, the confession, delivered not with remorse, but with a chilling sort of relief. He was in love with her. He wanted a divorce. Just like that. 15 years, 2 children, a shared history, erased. That divorce was brutal, not just emotionally but financially and legally. Mark, guided by Jessica's apparent ruthlessness, fought me on everything. Our house, the one we'd poured our savings and sweat into, became a battleground. He argued its value down, trying to minimize my share of the equity, which should have been around $150,000 each. He delayed child support payments, claiming business fluctuations, even though I knew his company was doing better than ever. Lawyers' fees mounted, eating away at the savings I desperately needed to start over. We finally settled, me getting the house but having to buy out his significantly reduced share, leaving me with a hefty mortgage and depleted funds. Custody was joint, but the handovers were tense, strained affairs, my children caught in the crossfire of adult failures. Life turned upside down. I went from being part of a team to being utterly alone in the trenches of single parenthood. The weight of responsibility was immense. Every decision, every bill, every scraped knee, every bedtime story, it was all on me. Loneliness was a constant companion, especially in the evenings after the kids were asleep. The silence of the house amplifying the emptiness in my heart. I increased my work hours, taking on freelance projects late into the night, fueled by coffee and anxiety. Sleep offered little respite, haunted by dreams of betrayal and loss. I felt like a ghost in my own life, left behind while the world moved. On and Mark? He moved on with breathtaking speed. Within 6 months of the divorce being finalized, he and Jessica were married. A lavish wedding in Napa Valley, photos splashed across social media. Him beaming, her radiant in white, a picture of blissful happiness. It was a knife twisting in the wound. How could he discard our life, our family so easily? How could he inflict so much pain and then just walk away into a seemingly perfect new beginning? Friends told me Jessica was pushing him to expand the business aggressively, to live a grander life. They bought a huge modern monstrosity of a house in a gated community, drove matching luxury SUVs, and took exotic vacations. It felt like they were flaunting their happiness, a happiness built on the wreckage of my family. The injustice of it all burned deep. For the first year or two after their wedding, Mark and Jessica's life seemed to be everything they'd projected. Perfect. Annoyingly so. Mark's business did seem to boom, at least initially. They were the golden couple, hosting parties, donating to charities, their faces appearing in local society columns. Jessica quit her consulting job to become, as she put it, involved in Mark's company, though nobody was quite sure what she actually did, besides redecorate the office and approve expenses. But then, subtle clues began to surface. Whispers. Among mutual acquaintances. Mark looking perpetually stressed during child exchanges, shadows under his eyes that weren't there before. Snippets of overheard conversations, hushed arguments about money, Jessica complaining about suppliers, Mark muttering about cash flow problems, their social media presence, once a constant stream of curated perfection, became less frequent, the smiles looking a little tighter. I heard through the grapevine that Jessica's spending was astronomical. Designer clothes, spa treatments, constant renovations on the new house, impulsive investments in questionable ventures. She treated the company account like her personal piggy bank. Mark, blinded by infatuation or perhaps intimidated by her, seemed unable or unwilling to rein her in. He was also taking bigger risks with the business, bidding aggressively on large, complex projects, possibly pressured by Jessica's desire for faster growth and more prestige. The dramatic turning point wasn't a single explosive event, but a slow, grinding implosion. It began with a major commercial project Mark's company had undertaken, a luxury condo development downtown. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious. Costs spiraled out of control. Subcontractors weren't paid on time. Deadlines were missed. Rumors of cut corners and subpar materials began circulating. Then came the lawsuit. Several, in fact. The developers sued Mark's company for breach of contract and faulty workmanship. Subcontractors filed liens for non-payment. The amounts were staggering, well into the 7 figures. Suddenly, Mark's booming business was facing a catastrophic financial crisis. The legal discovery process unearthed the real rot. It turned out Jessica hadn't just been spending lavishly. She'd been actively involved in the financial mismanagement. She had allegedly falsified invoices, diverted company funds to personal accounts, and pressured Mark into signing off on deals without proper due diligence. There were even suggestions of kickbacks from certain suppliers she had brought in. It wasn't just incompetence. It bordered on fraud. The consequences were swift and brutal. Mark's company was forced into bankruptcy protection. The court-appointed trustee began liquidating assets. The fancy house in the gated community, heavily mortgaged, went into foreclosure. The luxury SUVs were repossessed. Their bank accounts were frozen. The public humiliation was intense. The same society columns that once celebrated them now detailed their downfall. Mark looked like a broken man. During one particularly strained child pickup, he lingered, looking haggard. He didn't apologize, not directly, but he mumbled something about making mistakes, about things getting out of control. He blamed Jessica, of course, painting himself as a victim of her manipulation and greed. He even had the audacity to ask if I could help out a bit financially until he got back on his feet. The irony was almost too much to bear. Jessica, the architect of so much destruction, was facing her own reckoning. She was named in several of the lawsuits. Her reputation was ruined. I heard she was desperately trying to find work, but her name was toxic. The dazzling smile was gone, replaced by a permanent scowl. Their perfect life, built on my tears and betrayal, had shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. It wasn't divine intervention, perhaps. It was simply the inevitable collapse of a structure built on a rotten foundation. Karma, as they say, can be brutally efficient. Watching their empire crumble didn't bring me the simple, vindictive pleasure I might have once craved. Instead, it brought a complex mix of emotions. a grim sense of validation, pity for Mark, surprisingly, and an overwhelming feeling of relief that I was no longer entangled in that mess. Their downfall didn't magically erase my pain, but it did underscore the lessons I'd been forced to learn in the crucible of heartbreak. The most profound lesson was the rediscovery of my own strength. Being abandoned forces you to rely on yourself in ways you never thought possible. I learned I was capable of managing finances, fixing leaky faucets, comforting crying children, and navigating the complexities of life entirely on my own. The ordeal taught me the critical importance of self-love and resilience. I had bent, yes, but I hadn't broken. My worth wasn't tied to Mark or our marriage. It resided within me. Rebuilding. My life wasn't easy, but it was steady. I poured my energy into my work and my children. My design business grew as I took on more clients, my confidence blossoming with each successful project. I eventually earned enough to comfortably manage the mortgage Mark had left me saddled with. More importantly, I created a home environment filled with stability, laughter, and unconditional love for Lily and Tom. We didn't have the extravagant vacations or designer labels Mark and Jessica had flaunted, but we had peace. We had genuine connection. We had each other. I started saying yes to things again. Coffee with friends, joining a book club, even tentatively exploring the dating scene, though with much more caution and self-awareness this time. I found joy in simple things. Hiking. In the hills outside Austin, watching my kids succeed in school and activities, rediscovering hobbies I'd let slide during my marriage. Closure didn't come from witnessing Mark's misfortune. It came from within. It came from accepting what had happened, grieving the life I'd lost, and consciously choosing to build a new one, a better one, on my own terms. It came the day I realized I hadn't thought about Mark or Jessica at all. My mind occupied instead by plans for the future, my future. To anyone going through a similar hell, please hear this. Your pain is valid. Your anger is justified. But don't let it consume you. You are stronger than you think. This experience, as devastating as it feels right now, does not define you. Focus on yourself, on your healing. Practice self-compassion. Be as kind to yourself as you would be to a friend in the same situation. Believe, truly believe, that there is a brighter future waiting for you beyond the wreckage. It takes time. It takes work. But it is possible. There's a fundamental need, I think, for justice in the world. Not necessarily vengeful justice, but the simple principle that actions have consequences. Mark and Jessica's story became a stark illustration of that. Their choices, the betrayal, the greed, the recklessness, inevitably led to their downfall. It wasn't bad luck. It was the natural outcome of building a life on deceit and disregard for others. Mark faced significant legal accountability. The bankruptcy proceedings were long and invasive. He lost his business, his reputation, and nearly all his personal assets. He had to answer for the financial chaos he and Jessica had created, while he avoided criminal charges, the civil penalties, and the loss of his livelihood were substantial consequences. Jessica, too, faced legal battles and social ostracism. Their suffering wasn't something I reveled in, but it did affirm a sense of order. You cannot simply destroy lives and expect to walk away unscathed forever. Holding them accountable, however, was different from holding on to anger. Forgiveness became a crucial part of my healing, but it took time to understand what it truly meant. Forgiveness wasn't about saying what Mark did was okay. It wasn't about absolving him or Jessica. It was about releasing myself from the toxic grip of resentment. It was about acknowledging the pain, yes, but refusing to let it dictate my present or future happiness. Forgiving Mark allowed me to interact with him civilly for the sake of our children, without the constant churning of bitterness in my stomach. It was a gift I gave myself, the gift of emotional freedom. Throughout this journey, prioritizing my own well-being was paramount. I sought therapy to process the trauma and grief. I leaned on supportive friends and family. I learned to set firm boundaries, especially with Mark regarding co-parenting. Taking care of myself wasn't selfish. It was essential for my survival and for my ability to be the mother my children needed. I encourage anyone facing hardship to do the same. Seek help. Build your support system. Protect your peace fiercely. Never, ever give up on your own happiness. You deserve it. Looking back, my story isn't just about betrayal and karma. It's a testament to human resilience. We possess an incredible capacity to endure, to adapt, and to rebuild, even when faced with unimaginable pain. The Sarah who emerged from the ashes of her marriage was not the same woman who went into it. She was scarred, yes, but she was also stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, especially towards herself. The most important part of moving on is realizing that joy and happiness are not finite resources that someone else can steal permanently. They can be rediscovered, cultivated, and experienced again, often in more profound ways. My life today is rich and fulfilling. I find joy in my children's laughter, pride in my professional achievements, contentment in my peaceful home, and hope in the possibilities that lie ahead. I learned that happiness isn't about having a perfect life, but about appreciating the imperfect beauty of the life you have. Heartbreak and betrayal can feel like the end of the world, but they can also be the beginning of a new chapter, a chance to redefine yourself and your future. If you are standing in the ruins of what you thought your life would be, please know this. You have the power to build something new. Embrace the opportunity for a fresh start. Trust in your strength. Believe in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Your best days are not behind you. They are waiting for you to create them. Never give up,